She reached across the table to refill my coffee. Just a small, automatic gesture. And her sleeve slid back, and I saw it. A tattoo on the inside of her left wrist. 3 small letters. And the room didn't spin exactly, but something in my chest dropped straight down, like a stone through water, because I knew those letters. I had seen them before, just not on her. My son walked through the door with the woman he planned to marry, and within minutes, something shook me to my core. My name is Gerald Fitch. I'm 61 years old, retired from 22 years in commercial contracting, currently living alone in the house I built with my own hands on a half-acre outside of town. I grow tomatoes in the back. I drink too much coffee. I watch the news until I get annoyed and then switch it off and read instead. I have a dog named Brackett, a 10-year-old beagle mix who sleeps 18 hours a day and judges me silently for the other 6. My life, by most measurements, is quiet now. And I earned that quiet the hard way, through decades of physical work, a divorce that cost me more than money, and a few years of difficult recalibration where I had to figure out who I actually was when nobody was depending on me to be anything in particular. I have one son, Callum. He is 34 years old, and he is the best thing I have ever done. I say that without any of the performative humility people use when they talk about their kids, where they build them up and then immediately knock them back down with a qualifier. I mean it plainly and completely. Callum is kind. He is funny. He is stubborn in exactly the ways I was stubborn at his age, and he has built a genuinely good life. Stable work in logistics management, a decent apartment, a group of friends he has had since college who he actually shows up for. After his last serious relationship ended badly, a 2-year thing that unraveled in a way I never got the full story on, he went through a stretch where he seemed a little untethered. Not lost exactly, just not quite landed yet. I recognized it because I had done the same thing at his age, and nobody had had the vocabulary to name it for me either. So when he called me in March and said, "Dad, I want to bring someone home for you to meet," I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Uncomplicated happiness. Pure and simple and clean. "About time," I told him. He laughed. "Don't make it weird." When have I ever made anything weird? Do you want me to actually answer that? We went back and forth like that for a few minutes. The easy shorthand of a father and son who've had 20 years of practice calibrating each other. And when I hung up, I was smiling. I went out back and pulled some weeds in the tomato bed while Brackett watched from the grass, and I thought about what to make for dinner when they came. I wanted it to feel like home. Not impressive, not performed. Just like the kind of place a person could settle into. Her name was Priya Nath. She was 32, a landscape architect, originally from somewhere up north, had been living in the same city as Callum for about 3 years. He had met her through mutual friends at a birthday party, which I thought was a good origin story. Nothing algorithmic about it. No swiping. Just 2 people in a room finding each other the way people used to. I appreciated that detail more than I probably should have. They arrived on a Saturday afternoon in early April. The weather had just turned, that particular spring light that makes everything look freshly washed, like the world has had a chance to start over. I was on the porch when their car pulled in, and I watched Callum get out first, and then she stepped out of the passenger side, and even from a distance, I could tell she was warm. You can sometimes tell that from across a yard. The way a person moves, the way they take in a new place, curious rather than guarded, open rather than performing openness. Callum hugged me, clapped me on the back the way he does, that solid grip that tells me he's doing okay without needing to say it. "Dad, this is Priya." She put her hand out. Firm handshake, clear, direct eyes. "It's so good to finally meet you. Callum talks about you constantly. I feel like I already know this house." "He said good things, I hope," I said. "Mostly," she said. And the corner of her mouth went up, and Callum groaned. And we all laughed going through the door, and I thought, yes, good. This is good. I had made a pot roast, set the table properly, cloth napkins, the good plates, the ones that only come out when I mean something by it. We sat down, we ate. The conversation moved easily. She asked real questions, not polite conversation filler, but the kind that signaled genuine curiosity. About the contracting work, about building the house, about what varieties of tomatoes I grew and which ones I thought were actually worth the trouble. She had opinions about growing things, which made sense given her work, and we got into a 15-minute back and forth about soil drainage that I suspect bored Callum, but that I found genuinely engaging. Callum kept watching me with this expression I recognized from when he was a teenager, bringing home report cards. The face of someone who wants very badly for two things he cares about to align. And then she reached across the table to refill my coffee. Just a small, automatic, unthinking gesture of hospitality. And her sleeve slid back, and I saw it. 3 letters on the inside of her left wrist, in plain block ink. D-R-F. My initials are G-R-F. Gerald Ray Fitch. My brother's initials were D-R-F. Donnie Ray Fitch. My brother had been dead for 9 years. I kept my face still. I said something ordinary, probably thank you, probably something entirely unremarkable, and the conversation moved on, and I sat there trying to do math that didn't add up to anything comfortable. I told myself I was jumping. D-R-F are not rare initials. It could mean anything. A grandmother, a childhood friend, a teacher, a phrase with meaning only to her. I ran through the reasonable explanations firmly and methodically, the way you do when you already suspect the reasonable explanations aren't going to hold. She was telling a story about a landscaping project that had gone sideways. Something about a drainage miscalculation that flooded a client's entire garden the week before a wedding. And Callum was laughing so hard he had to put his fork down. I watched them together. They were easy with each other in the way that takes real time to build. Finishing each other's rhythm without overriding it. The small, constant attentiveness that looks like nothing until you've been in enough relationships without it to know exactly what it is. I told myself to leave it alone. I am not, at my core, a man who can leave things alone. After dinner, Callum went out to the car to bring in their bags. They were staying the night, and Priya and I were alone in the kitchen. I was at the sink. She was beside me drying dishes, which she had volunteered for without being asked, and we had about 3 minutes of comfortable quiet before I heard myself speak. "Can I ask you something personal?" She looked up. "Of course." "The tattoo on your wrist. Those initials." A beat. Half a second. Just enough to tell me she had been carrying the answer to this question for a while, even if she hadn't known I was the one who would eventually ask it. D-R-F, she said evenly. "Yeah." "Who is it for?" She set the dish down and turned to face me squarely. Her expression didn't close. It just became more deliberate. "Someone I knew a long time ago. He passed away. We were close when I was in my early 20s. The kitchen got very quiet. "What was his name?" I asked. And even as I said it, I was aware that I was standing at the edge of something, that whatever she said next would change the shape of the evening, and possibly a great deal more. "Donnie Fitch," she said. And then she looked at my face, and her own face went very still. "Gerald, what?" "Donnie was my brother," I said. We stood there on opposite sides of a kitchen that had suddenly contracted to about half its normal size, looking at each other, both of us holding something heavy and unexpected that neither of us had been prepared to pick up that evening. Callum came back through the door with 2 bags and stopped when he felt the room. "What happened?" he said. Neither of us answered right away, and the silence said enough. "I want to tell you I handled the next hour cleanly and with grace." I didn't entirely. I asked too many questions too fast. Not with anger, I want to be clear about that, but with an intensity that I could see was a lot to be on the receiving end of. She answered all of them. She didn't retreat or get defensive or ask me why it mattered. She told us she had known Donnie for about 2 years when she was in her mid-20s, that they had moved in overlapping social circles up north, that they had dated for 8 months and ended things before his death. Still friends, she said, still in contact. And that when he died in a car accident, it had leveled her in a way she hadn't anticipated. The tattoo came a year after, her way of carrying him forward. She had not known, when she met Callum at a birthday party 3 years ago, that his last name was Fitch. He went by Cal to most people. Fitch came later, gradually, as things got more serious. She had not put it together. And she had absolutely not known, until that moment standing in my kitchen with a dish towel in her hand, that Donnie had an older brother named Gerald, who lived on a half-acre and grew tomatoes, and had been quietly not dealing with his grief for 9 years. Callum was very quiet through all of this. He had known Donnie only as a very young child. Donnie was my younger brother by 8 years, and the estrangement between us had happened when Callum was still in elementary school. Callum knew there had been a falling out. He knew there had been a failed attempt at reconciliation somewhere in there, an attempt I had handled with all the emotional dexterity of a man who had never once been taught how to say, "I'm sorry," without it feeling like surrender. He knew the outline. He did not know the weight of it. He looked at me now and said, "Dad, are you okay?" And that was the question that cracked it open. Not the revelation itself, not the initials, not the connection, not even the strangeness of the coincidence, but my son asking me in a gentle voice if I was okay. Because what the tattoo had actually done was blow open a door I had sealed shut a long time ago and gotten very efficient at not walking past. Donnie and I were not on good terms when he died. That is the plain truth of it. We had been building towards something, a slow, halting, imperfect attempt to find our way back to each other after years of silence. And then the accident happened on a Wednesday in November, and we ran out of time. And I had been carrying the specific weight of unfinished things ever since. Not loudly, not in a way that anyone would necessarily notice from the outside. Just as a low-grade permanent heaviness. A room I kept locked. A name I could say without flinching, but couldn't say with any real peace. I went out onto the back porch. The spring night was cool and smelled like turned earth and something faintly sweet from whatever was blooming in the neighbor's yard. Brackett followed me out and sat on my foot, which he does when he senses something is off. I stood there in the dark for probably 5 minutes before Callum came out and stood beside me. He didn't say anything right away. He has known since he was a teenager that I sometimes need a minute to exist inside something before I can talk about it. And he has always given me that without making me feel like a burden for needing it. I don't know where he learned that kind of patience. Not from me, certainly. Not in his early years. "This is a lot," he said finally. "It is. What are you thinking?" I took my time. I'm thinking that I don't have any reason to hold this against her, and that whatever I'm feeling right now is mine to carry, not something I get to put on her shoulders or on yours. He nodded, slowly, looking out at the dark yard. "She's good people, Dad. Whatever this turns out to be." "I know," I said. I could see that at dinner, before any of this. The rest of the weekend moved carefully, the way things move after something unexpected has passed through a space. Quieter, more deliberate, but not damaged. Sunday morning, Callum and I walked the perimeter of the property while Priya slept in, and he asked me, plainly, what I actually thought of her. Separate from everything. Just her. "I think she's exactly who you described on the phone," I said. "I think you did genuinely well." The relief on Callum's face was something I won't forget. They got engaged 4 months later. The wedding was the following spring. Small, outdoor, the kind of ceremony that feels like it was designed for the people in it rather than for the photographs of it. I stood beside my son while he married a woman who had once loved my brother, who carried his initials on her wrist, who had sat at my kitchen table and answered every hard question I threw at her with steadiness and honesty and more grace than the situation required. Have you ever had a moment where a complete stranger handed you back a piece of someone you thought you'd lost for good? I think it happens more than any of us talk about, and I'd really love to hear your version down in the comments. You never know who else is reading and needs to know they're not alone in it. If this story stayed with you at all, please give it a like and hit subscribe. There's a lot more where this came from, and I'm just getting started.